All right. Well, here we are for another week. Little
Yeah,
fan addicts
yeah,
trying
we're
to get
back.
fired up for it.
Super fired up. Let's start with what did you do this weekend?
Not a lot. My back is not good right now. That was a
Oh,
rough week last week with the back going out. So, what did we do? Saturday, just cleaned up the truck a little bit. Sunday morning was the quarantine cruise. So we did the cruise and then fired up the smoker and just kind of sat around and barbecued or smoked some meat and watched some football and drank some beer.
sounds like your back had a pretty good vacation.
If you don't have I don't like pills to begin with, but
I feel
a
that I'm
little
in that same
beer
boat.
never hurts. Sprinkle in a little tequila and it was just right.
A little bit of smoked meat in there. Oh, that's it. Game
Do a little
over.
meal. My kids are all into meal prepping right now, so I'm like, well, you got to get me on that prep program. So I said I'd smoke some meat, and so we got little salads with some smoked ribeye and chicken this week.
That's dangerous, man. That's like, oh my gosh.
Got to eat.
Oh,
I
that's
like to
like,
eat.
yeah, that's good food. That's good eating.
How about you? What'd you do this weekend?
I went down to San Diego. I did a little open house. I was supposed to see a friend, but didn't work out in the end. Um, yeah, and then I just worked more and more and more. A lot of answering emails, a lot of running comps, fun stuff.
Sometimes it's like that. Sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's work.
Yeah, no, I mean, I look at it like this. I'm so blessed to live in California, and I get to work and help people every single day. And ultimately, I'm helping them make a big decision in their life, and that feeling I get once I there was actually a gentleman I helped find a property. And that look in his eye when he walked in the door, I was like, "That's what makes it worth it right there."
Cool.
Yeah, fun stuff.
Yep.
So you hurt your back, but you were actually doing something last week that wasn't
Yeah.
ideal for that. But so what'd you do?
Yeah. We went up to the OCP show, which is Open Compute, and the Open Compute show is focusing on data center stuff. So we actually had Graham Chen, our CEO from Taiwan, came over, and Irina, who's heading up our business unit 5, that's the high compute or high performance computing fans that we have rolling out in Q1 next year. And it's also just pursuing and looking at this portion of the industry and how it evolves. So it's like I got some really cool pictures, and it's like, I mean, we saw stuff like we can show here, some of the water cooling stuff that was going on. I mean, these racks with manifold systems in them, and I mean, it's just crazy. So we've got air cooled examples that we'll show here, right? Some really fancy heat sinks going on, and a lot. I believe a couple of these are the Dell servers. Like Dell has a really big partnership with NVIDIA, and it's like it's really just understanding all these different companies and how they're partnering with NVIDIA and Broadcom and these guys that are making all the units. So we find that within the servers, you have power PDUs, which are power distribution units. Those are loaded with fans, or typically 1U things. Here's an example here. This is like a Meta server that has all the power units in it, right? So, I mean, Meta was there, and I mean, all the big guys. So it's just, I mean, I keep coming back to it. It's unbelievable because like this sidecar system here, like this is a really cool looking unit because it's all, lit up and everything, but it's basically, you've got all these AI servers that are water cooled, no fans, right? You're pumping all the water through this sidecar unit, and it's pretty amazing. So ran into a few customers, had a good conversation with them, and looking at, guys that do backups, the power modules, Ethernet switchers, all that stuff. So I think in coming episodes, right, because we said we've got the special episode in this next week or so of an unboxing of a special treat we got out in the lab right now.
Oh yeah,
So
uncrating even I would
we'll be
say.
working on that next week, right? And then it's like all these, we call it the high performance or fan series. As those are coming along in first quarter next year, we'll start talking about those probably in December. It's like, I don't, we can talk about it, but it's like, if we're going to talk about it, we want to be able to deliver on it. So So yeah, it was a good week. Was there Monday through Thursday, and back at it this week.
Got it. Awesome. Looks like we're super busy, even getting
Hey,
a phone call right
whatever. No,
now.
no rest for the weary. But onward, we can keep rolling. It's all good.
Yes, sir. So today we're actually going to be talking about IP ratings.
Yes, sir.
So first of all, what are IP ratings?
So the IP stands for Ingress Protection, right? So the IP rating started back when you've got these enclosures, right, for electronics. So for something that everybody knows, right? The boxes on the corner of the streets out here by light signals,
Hmm.
right? They house all the electronics and things that make the stoplights turn red and green and all that stuff, right? So like a box like that would have an IP rating because it needs to be waterproof,
Of course.
right? So ingress protection is like, it's environmental, so it's going to address how much dust and how much water can penetrate a box or a device.
Got it. And then you mentioned how much dust or water. So I believe that has to do with the numbers. So it could be like IP27 or even
It does.
IP68, let's say.
That's right.
Can you go into a little more detail about what the numbers mean and how those correlate?
For sure. So, right here we'll have up the list because the ingress protection on the lineup here is for the industry. This is not something that Charlie made up, and that I'm just trying to apply to my fans. It applies to whether you make connectors or fans or enclosures. For this conversation, obviously, this is about fans. So, yes, the first digit to your note, if you had IP68, right? We'll focus on that one. That's one of the highest level ratings you can have. So the first digit on the number, right, is for dust. And then the second number is for water. So when you look at the, I'll put this list up here again, right? These standards, like when you have a level 2, the amount of dust that could penetrate a product, right? They measure it by particle size,
Hmm.
right? So it could be up to like 2 millimeters, right? But then as you go from a 3 to a 4 to a 5 to a 6, ultimately a 6 means it's completely sealed. Nothing can penetrate it. So like if you have that box on the corner for the stoplights, right? The door closes, there's no vents. That means when that thing's locked up, no dust will get inside of it. Then when you get to the water, you can see when you look on the list here, bring it back up one more time. All the water things, they go by water jets. So if you had your box in a test environment in a UL lab or Intertech or any of the other guys out there, right? You're going to have it in there, and then they have this whole array of like sprinklers
Hmm.
essentially, or water jets. So they spray them from different angles. So when you get into the level 4 and 5, it may have, okay, water spraying at it from a 45-degree angle, right? Or from a sideways. And that's like if you're in a torrential downpour and the dang wind's blowing sideways, right? And you just want to know, can the water get in there? So, fans are a little bit trickier because it's not just a box that you can seal up because the fan blade moves. So that's kind of the difference between me or Delta or Sanyo or Sunon or whatever, right? Because you have different processes and how you can apply achieving those ratings.
Interesting. And so you touched on it briefly when you mentioned the stoplight, but let's just dive a little bit deeper. How do IP ratings affect different industries, and what industries tend to go towards different IP ratings?
Yeah, it's not to say that there's a specific, like if you were in doing traffic light signals, right? Like you may only say, okay, well, those boxes need to be IP55, right? Well, it depends, right? Because you could have a box in Arizona, right, where it's super important to have it sealed for dust, but then you could have the same box in Florida to where you can get, hurricanes that are just stinking blowing it off the face of the earth, right? So you got to look at how you want it. But I would say, how does it affect it? It's like being able to have a fan that can be in a device at various levels and be able to give you the reliability that you want, right? Because if you have a fan that's on the side of that box, it's a traffic signal, and you just slap it on the outside, right? Well, the fan's going to get beat up because it's going to take all the dust, it's going to take water. But if we got it all sealed up and it's working great, it's going to help you maintain that reliability that you want in your unit over time.
100%.
So, a second example, right? That's not the best example. So we like industrial accounts, right? A lot of those customers want IP67 or sealed fans inside because they want it more for the dust than the water, right?
Mhm.
Like if you had an industrial machine, a piece of equipment sitting in your shop, whether it's a welding machine or a plasma cutter or a mill or something, right? Like, you don't wash your shop down every night, but you might have wash down things where you might want to hose stuff down, right? And you got to get it wet a little bit. All right, so you want to protect it against that. So it's great. But the dust and the metal dust and all the things that go along, right? We can do IP ratings that help your fans live better in harsh environments too, not just wet environments. So that's some of the other things that we can look at, marine applications where you have heavy salt spray, and there's all kinds of different things that we can really get into. And those are some of the things that we want to talk about along the way of how we do modified standards for specific industries, and we can do these specialty things because we've been doing this a long time, and we've seen regular things that are needed within those industries to make our fans better for those applications.
That's amazing. So you touched briefly on how we're able to achieve IP ratings in our systems. Could you take a little bit deeper dive into that? I know you can't really tell us
Yeah, well,
everything.
so the basics are, we've got about four different levels, right? If you wanted a basic protection from moisture, right, from just like condensation, we can do a basic varnish coating, right? That's on the PCBA, so that way, it's no drop of moisture is going to short out your circuit board. That's a real low cost solution, right? The next step up would be a conformal coating, right? That's going to get you to where it's like, okay, if it got rained on a little bit or got a little wet, you're going to do okay. That's like in the IP 43 range, right? Once you get into IP 55 and 56, we do this really nice parylene coating, right? It's a vacuum sealed process. We do the whole motor assembly, right? Plus some other things that if you want to engage with us, we're happy to disclose it. But some of the little features we have are proprietary, because we feel like we do certain things better than some of our competitors. And then when you get into the fully sealed fans, that's when we take it to the next level. It's like a fully potted motor plus a whole bunch of other cool little upgrades in there. So, these things can run fully submerged.
Awesome.
And
And then what are the trade-offs between a lower IP rating and a higher IP rating ultimately if I'm an engineer taking a look at it?
really, it's just the trade-offs are, I wouldn't even call it a trade-off because it's like, well, what do you want, right? I mean, it's a difference between, it's like, well, you either want a hamburger or a cheeseburger, right? There's no trade-off between the two. It's like, what do you want, right? And so, like IP55 or IP43, the only trade-off is yes, they cost more as you go up the scale, but we're not really in the business of trying to sell you something you don't need. I always say it's like, well, let's look at what you're doing and tell me what your goals are and what you want to do. And that way I can get you into the exact technology that you need so that you're not overpaying for something.
Fair enough. And then has there been a time in the past where our IP ratings were actually able to solve a challenge a specific customer had? And how were we able to solve it? And ultimately, how are we able to help them for the future?
A really good one, and actually the reason it's interesting is because it didn't, solving an issue with getting into an IP rating is easy, right? I mean, it's like, well, what's the problem? It's getting wet. You want this protection? Here it is, right? Well, we had another customer that was doing POS terminals, right? Cash registers for old school terms, right? A
Mhm.
point of sale terminal is something you would use at the grocery store or whatever to pay for your stuff, right? Well, these devices in some applications, like this movie theater chain, they would mount them next to the popcorn machine. And you're like, okay, whatever, right? Well, what do they sprinkle on top of the popcorn every time it gets finished, right? A bunch of salt and a bunch of butter and all that. Well, the next thing you know, these fans, right? Because they're sucking in ambient air right around them. Between the salt and everything and the grease that was going on, it's getting drawn into the fan, rusting the motor and the bearings out and coating it. So we went in, we did a basic varnish coating on the motor and a couple other little tricks, in there. And the next thing you know, it's like, okay, we're good. So it's understanding your environment and being able to have little things that can dramatically improve the reliability of the part. So that was kind of like, it wasn't getting wet. It wasn't failing because of anything like that, but being able to add a coating helped protect it in the environment that it lived in.
Help to keep off all the seaseaning and then the flavors from the system.
Hey, we can get a little salty around here, but we don't like it in our food. I guess anybody that knows me, it's like, hey, but it's all for fun.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sorry, I gotta take a second. Um, in terms of IP ratings in the future, where is it headed?
I think that doing the IP ratings is becoming more and more people are embracing it because they find that the fans can survive in the harsher environments. Where's it going? We have tubing and stuff that we do on our wires that we can do better work of sealing up the whole cable assembly. We do IP67 connectors or other variants on there. So it's just really the flexibility of how we can package it all up. I feel like the next round of waterproofing is getting into all these water cooled systems and making sure those things aren't leaking, right? And that's a whole nother realm of, you know, water within electronics. It's like, who would have thought that would ever be, how you get stuff done. But um, right now, I would say that I feel like we're at the top of our game for the higher level of IP stuff. It's working really well. And because the IP ratings are an industry standard, it's not like I can improve them or change them, right? Because we have to comply with what the standards are. So I would say it's just moving forward, very competitive on the price, able to do certifications when certifications are needed on it, and just do all the proper things that makes it easiest for you to implement in your system.
I love that. Is there anything you want to tell our viewers at home? Any little tidbits about IP ratings that you believe they should know or anything like that?
Yeah, I think, as you look at your system and you want to get in and have options, look at what you want, right? And look at what the ratings are because sometimes for us fan guys, it is more difficult in how we apply the ratings to them. And so, understanding what it is you want to accomplish will help us coach you into the appropriate goal. And again, not be paying for more than what you need.
Fair enough. Well, hey, that was IP ratings, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I'm Eden.
I'm Charlie.
Have a good one.
All right, keep it cool.
Keep it cool.